They told you to fight for what you love, to never give up, to keep proving your worth until the other person finally wakes up and realizes what they lost. You grew up with that story, the childhood fairy tale that love is won by chasing harder, speaking louder, holding on longer. But what if that very belief is the chain keeping you stuck, humiliated and powerless? Here's the truth few dare to say aloud. The fastest way to make someone regret losing you isn't another grand speech or one more desperate reach. It's one quiet, brutal move. Silence. Yes, silence. The act your ego will resist with every fiber. Because the human mind hates a vacuum. When you go silent, you don't just disappear. You create a hole so heavy they can't stop staring at it. Each day you hold that space, the psychological pressure rises, curiosity turns to discomfort, and discomfort becomes regret. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look there." Silence is that turning point. It's the moment you stop living in reaction mode and start reclaiming yourself. But here's the trap. The first days are brutal. Your heart will beg you to break it, to send just one message to soothe the ache. That's why most men never make it to the shift. They sabotage the silence before it can change the game. Drop one if you've ever tried to fix love with words and felt smaller every time. Drop two if you know deep down that silence, though terrifying, is the move that flips the power dynamic. Like this video so more men searching for strength can find it. Subscribe to Stoic Station for daily lessons on silence, discipline, and inner power. Start this journey now, because the moment you understand how to weaponize silence, everything changes, and it begins right here, where pain first meets quiet strength. 1. The first pain, when silence cuts deep. Brother, there is a silence that does not just fill a room, it strips you bare. It's the kind of silence the Stoics spoke of when they said we suffer more from the stories we tell ourselves than from the events themselves. When the person you love withdraws and stops answering, the absence you feel is more than their voice disappearing. It is the echo of your own longing coming back to confront you. You know this scene because you've lived it. The phone sits face down, but its weight presses on you like a stone. The clock ticks so loudly it seems to mock you. Each sound in the house, the hum of the fridge, the faint buzz of a light, suddenly feels amplified against the backdrop of their silence. Days have passed since the last reply, and with each one your chest tightens a little more. The urge grows. Just send something, anything to break this awful quiet. A joke to lighten the air, a casual check-in, even an apology you know you don't owe. Anything to make the space between you feel less brutal. You scroll through the old messages, reading them like an archaeologist, hoping to unearth some hidden key that will unlock their attention again. But there is nothing new to find, just the cold final words sitting there, unacknowledged. You imagine how it would feel if you sent one more text, and somewhere inside you know the truth. Each word you send right now would sound like begging. Each attempt to break the silence would only push them further away. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes. This realization hurts because it feels powerless. You want to fix what's broken. You want to feel seen again. But every instinct to act seems to backfire. The silence is maddening because it exposes a deeper wound. How much of your power you've quietly handed over. You start to understand that this ache isn't only about them ignoring you. It's about you losing yourself somewhere along the way. You feel invisible not because they vanished, but because you abandoned your own center to keep them close. And here is where the shift begins. Instead of reaching outward for relief, you pause, you breathe. You consider what this silence might be trying to teach you. Maybe it isn't punishment. Maybe it's a signal, a whisper saying something has to change, not in them, but in you. Maybe the discomfort is showing you the cost of living in reaction mode, of always rushing to close every gap and fix every fracture. Maybe this moment, as brutal as it feels, is your first real chance to reclaim your presence. The first lesson of this journey is simple but hard. Do not feed the silence with desperation. Do not fill it with words that beg to be noticed. Face it. Let it speak to you. Let it reveal what needs to be rebuilt inside. This is not about surrendering to hopelessness. It's about refusing to keep bleeding power into a void that does not return it. Many men will break here. They will send the late-night paragraph, the casual meme, the quiet plea dressed as a joke, and with each attempt, they shrink further. But you have a different path. You can choose to hold the silence instead of fearing it, to sit with the discomfort long enough to learn from it, to stop trying to escape it and start using it as a mirror. Because when you do, the silence that once felt like a cage begins to feel like a forge. Brother, this is where the journey truly begins. It's the moment you stop scrambling for validation and start building the strength to stand on your own. And once you feel that first flicker of power returning, once you realize you can survive the quiet without losing yourself, everything about this story starts to change. Stay with me, because what comes next will show you how that same silence that once crushed you can become the very force that makes them regret losing you. 2. Facing the truth. You gave away your power. Brother, here's a truth most men avoid because it hurts too much to face. The pain you're feeling right now isn't only about rejection. It's the price of surrendering your power. Somewhere along the way, without even noticing, you built a life where your value depended on someone else's attention. And now that attention is gone, the emptiness feels unbearable. Think back. How many times have you been the one to chase, to explain, to justify your feelings? You believed love meant proving your worth, that if you tried harder, gave more, bent further, they would finally see how valuable you are. You told yourself you were fighting for love, but you were quietly giving away control. Each time you rushed to fill the silence, to close the gap, to fix what felt broken, you were training them to believe your worth was negotiable. This is what makes their silence so sharp now. It's not just the lack of their voice, it's the echo of every moment you taught them they could take you for granted. You built a pattern where their approval became the judge of your value, and now that approval is gone, the ground beneath you shakes. That's why this hurts more than just a broken relationship. It's an exposed wound where your self-respect should have been anchored. It stings to see it. You catch yourself asking, was I always this easy to dismiss? Have I really been this willing to hand over my dignity just to keep someone close? The realization burns because you know it's true. Somewhere along the way, you forgot your own weight. You forgot that your presence is not meant to be begged for. You forgot that the right kind of love meets you in strength, not in constant proving. But don't let this sting turn into shame. Let it wake you up. This is your call to reclaim the ground you gave away. You do not regain respect by louder pleading or by performing harder. You regain it by returning to yourself, by reclaiming your presence, by choosing silence not as surrender, but as strategy. The very quiet that once felt like punishment can become your first act of power. When you stop rushing to fill the void, you stop teaching them that you exist to fix their comfort. You start showing that you belong to yourself. This first shift is not about revenge. It's about ending the cycle that made you small. The decision is mental before it's practical, to see that this pain is not only heartbreak, but a signal that you've been living on borrowed validation, a signal that it's time to stand up inside yourself again. The moment you understand this, everything changes. The silence you're holding stops feeling like death and starts feeling like rebirth. It's the first step out of a pattern that's drained you for years. And here's where the real transformation begins. Because once you reclaim even a fraction of that lost power, the story no longer belongs to them. It starts to belong to you. Stay with me, brother, because the next move will teach you how to hold this silence long enough for it to rebuild the strength they never thought you could find. 3. The inner war. Early days of holding silence. Brother, the hardest battles are never fought on open fields. They are fought alone, in quiet rooms where no one sees the struggle but you. The moment you decide to stop reaching out, to hold your silence instead of chasing, the world does not applaud. It closes in. Anxiety comes first, fast and brutal, whispering and then screaming. Send one perfect line and fix it all. Your heart races at night while the rest of the world sleeps. You lie awake staring at the ceiling, imagining that one clever text that could reset everything. Maybe a joke to break the tension, maybe an apology you don't even owe. But each draft feels smaller than the man you want to be. Each imagined message sounds more like begging when you hear it back in your own head. This is the ego in full panic mode. It tells you that silence means loss. It says if you don't act now, you'll lose them forever. It spins out every worst-case scenario, that they're forgetting you, that they've already moved on, that your chance is slipping away minute by minute. Your chest tightens until breathing feels like work. Your jaw locks. Sleep is fragile and fleeting. Every minute alone feels like punishment, like the silence itself is trying to break you. But here's the truth you have to hold on to when the panic hits. Discipline is a muscle, and right now, you're in your first training session. Every single time you resist the urge to break the silence, you lift an invisible weight. Each rep feels heavy because you've never trained this part of yourself before, the muscle of emotional discipline. This is why it hurts so much. Growth always feels like tearing before it feels like strength. You are rewiring the nervous system that for years has been addicted to instant reassurance. The first nights will test everything in you. You'll pick up the phone, unlock the screen, scroll through old conversations, then lock it again. You'll pace the room, replaying memories, wondering if you're being foolish. But each time you choose not to send that message, you're taking back a piece of yourself. Each minute of restraint is proof that you are no longer ruled by impulse alone. You are not surrendering, you are training. The Stoics believed that courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Right now, your fear is loud, but your stillness is louder. Every night you hold back from reaching out, you forge a new response, one that is not driven by panic, but by self-respect. And though it feels invisible now, this quiet war is shaping the man you're becoming. You are proving to yourself, in real time, that you can survive the unknown. You are teaching your mind that it does not need their reply to feel alive. Brother, this is only the beginning. The discipline you build in these dark, restless hours will become the foundation for everything that follows. Each day you hold the silence. You're not just enduring pain, you're reclaiming power. And once you taste the strength that comes from mastering your own impulse, you'll begin to see how silence, once your enemy, can become your greatest weapon. Stay with this fight, because what comes next is the turning point where scarcity starts to work in your favor and the balance of desire begins to shift. 4. Scarcity's secret. Desire follows what's rare. Brother, attraction follows rules that feel unfair, but are carved deep into human nature. What's abundant loses value, what's rare becomes magnetic. You may not want to believe this, especially if you've spent years proving love by giving more, but you've probably felt the truth. The more available you made yourself, The faster you replied, the quicker you showed up to explain, soothe, and fix, the less she seemed to treasure what you offered. You didn't lose value because you were unworthy. You lost value because you stopped being scarce. Think back to the early days when your presence felt light, unforced, when she wondered what you might do next. Slowly, without noticing, you became predictable. You filled every silence before it could stretch long enough to make her wonder. You answered every message instantly, fixed every misunderstanding, closed every emotional gap. You believed this was love, that protecting her from discomfort would keep her close. But each time you rushed to remove space, you also removed mystery. Each time you erased distance, you erased the chance for her to feel your absence and remember why you mattered. Over time, this predictability turned you into a constant supply of comfort she didn't have to earn. Your availability became a background hum, always there, always ready, always safe. And though stability is beautiful, unchecked availability breeds complacency. Desire is built on a delicate balance of knowing someone cares, but not being able to control them completely. When you gave her constant access, you unknowingly gave away the very tension that fuels attraction. Realizing this hurts. You replay conversations and remember the times you overcompensated, the late-night calls you answered on the first ring, the plans you rearranged to keep her happy, the emotional labor you did without boundaries. You begin to see the pattern. You weren't loved less because you weren't good enough. You were loved less because you became too easy to reach, too easy to read, too easy to keep. But brother, don't mistake this truth for cynicism. Scarcity is not a manipulative game. It's a reality of human desire. We value what feels rare because rarity signals worth. Something always available doesn't require effort. Something that can stand alone demands respect. By holding your silence now, you're not playing hard to get. You're breaking the old pattern that taught her you'd always bridge the gap. You're reclaiming the natural gravity that comes when a man belongs first to himself. This is why staying quiet feels powerful, even though it's uncomfortable. It interrupts the rhythm she once controlled. It forces her to experience a world where your attention is no longer guaranteed. It allows space for curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of desire. People don't chase what they can always reach. They chase what they fear losing. The first shift happens inside you. You stop being the endless supply of reassurance. You stop feeding predictability. You start letting the vacuum exist without rushing to fill it. And in that vacuum, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. She feels the difference. She wonders where the man who always bent toward her went. She notices the silence not as absence, but as weight. What's scarce becomes valuable. What stands on its own becomes desired. This isn't about punishing her. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about no longer trading self-respect for temporary closeness. And the moment you embrace this truth, everything begins to tilt back in your favor. Brother, hold the silence long enough, and you'll watch the balance of desire shift in ways words could never force. Stay with me, because next, we'll explore how this silence doesn't just stop the cycle of neediness. It becomes an active weapon of self-respect that makes the other side start to reach back toward you. 5. Silence as a weapon. Power without words. Brother, silence is not emptiness. It's reflection, and when you understand how to use it, it becomes one of the most powerful forces you have. In the beginning, though, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like punishment. It feels like you're being left behind, like you've lost, like the quiet is a verdict against you. Nights stretch long and heavy, and the absence feels louder than any argument could. But time starts to reveal something unexpected. The silence you thought was a cage becomes a mirror. It reflects their choices back to them with brutal clarity. There's no distraction, no noise to hide behind. Suddenly, they're left alone with the consequences of their actions, the cold space they created. Every unanswered message, every dismissive look, every moment they assumed you would come running is now staring them in the face. At first, they don't know what to do with it. They expected you to keep the old pattern alive, to chase, to explain, to bridge every gap. That's the rhythm they were used to, you reaching, them deciding. But now the game has stopped, and they're left with a silence they can't control. The predictability that once made them feel secure is gone, and unpredictability is powerful. Curiosity creeps in slowly, then grows louder. Why isn't he playing the old game? Why hasn't he sent something by now? Did I push too far? Did I lose him? The mind hates uncertainty. It wants to know where you stand, and when it can't predict you, it starts to fill the gap with questions, doubt, and even fear. This is when the silence begins to do its quiet work, not as revenge, but as consequence. It's important to understand, your silence is not a childish tactic. It's not about manipulation or punishment, it's a declaration. Without a single word, it says, I am no longer available for disrespect. I am not here to rescue you from the discomfort you created. I will not trade my dignity for scraps of attention. Silence is the boundary you should have drawn long ago, and now you finally are. This shift is profound. The quiet no longer feels like passive suffering. It becomes active self-respect. You're no longer sitting helpless, waiting for them to decide if you're worthy. You're creating space where you can stand tall again. You're forcing the dynamic to reset because you refuse to play the old part. Something else happens when you embrace this mindset. The quiet stops being heavy. It starts to feel deliberate. You notice the strength that comes from not reacting. You realize you can endure their uncertainty without losing yourself. You feel the energy you used to spend chasing now coming back to fuel you, into your work, your health, your own growth. And while you're changing, they feel it. They sense the shift even if they don't say a word. The man they thought they could predict is no longer predictable. The man who once bent without limits now stands still and unshaken. That presence, calm, silent, firm, becomes louder than any speech you could give. It makes them think, it makes them question, it makes them remember. Brother, this is where silence transforms from pain into power. You've stopped being a participant in the old cycle. You've stopped being a source of easy validation. And the longer you hold this stance, the more the weight shifts back into your hands. This isn't about winning some petty game. It's about finally valuing yourself enough to stop chasing people who don't value you. Stay with this, because once you feel how silence reclaims respect, both from them and from yourself, you'll understand why it's not weakness at all. It's strategy, it's strength, and it's the foundation for the next stage where the energy you've saved begins to rebuild a man they never expected you to become. 6. Rebuild yourself. Turn pain into discipline. Brother, every ounce of energy you've poured into overthinking can be reclaimed and turned into strength. The same mental fire that once burned you out can forge you into someone unrecognizable, but only if you stop feeding it into obsession. For too long you've wasted nights decoding emojis, reading into every delay in a reply, stalking social media to see what they're doing and with whom. Each scroll drained your spirit and left you weaker than before. You were working hard, but in the wrong direction, exhausting yourself in a battle you could never win because the war was never out there. It was inside you. Now comes the shift. Instead of chasing ghosts on a screen, you redirect. You start by clearing the noise with journaling, pouring out the thoughts that loop endlessly in your head until they lose their power. You pick up weights or go for a run, not just to move your body, but to remind yourself what control feels like. You turn to philosophy, the kind of wisdom men like Seneca carried through storms of their own. Silence is a lesson learned through life's many sufferings. Let the silence that once felt cruel become your classroom. Every page you read, every line you underline, builds a deeper understanding of who you are without anyone else's approval. It's not easy. The urge to check your phone doesn't disappear overnight. Some mornings it tempts you like a siren, whispering that one peek couldn't hurt. Some nights feel unbearably quiet, and loneliness creeps in like fog. Your old self will fight back, begging you to break discipline for just one quick fix of attention. But every time you resist, something powerful happens. You fortify the new identity you're building. Each act of restraint is a brick in the foundation of self-respect. Slowly you start replacing the patterns that drained you. Morning walks take the place of late-night spirals. Workouts push out the restless pacing that used to own you. Books and reflection replace endless scrolling. Instead of seeking validation from a screen, you feed your mind, your body, your future. The same mental energy that once tore you apart begins to rebuild you, rep by rep, page by page, step by step. And with each small victory, something inside shifts. The silence stops feeling like starvation and starts feeling like fuel. You begin to realize that the discipline you're practicing isn't just about surviving heartbreak. It's about becoming stronger than you were before. The man who once panicked at every unanswered message is slowly turning into a man who moves with intention, who invests his energy where it actually matters. This growth isn't loud. It doesn't show up in grand announcements or revenge posts. It lives quietly in the way you carry yourself, in the way you start the day without reaching for your phone, in the way you handle setbacks with calm instead of chaos. Discipline stops being an idea and becomes a lived experience, a daily practice of holding your own center no matter what happens outside you. Brother, this is where the journey stops being survival and starts becoming transformation. The silence you once feared is now working for you, sharpening you, rebuilding you. Keep going, because the man who emerges from this season of focused growth is not just healed, he's magnetic. And soon, the same presence that once felt desperate will become the very presence they can't ignore. 7. Magnetic calm. The return of presence. Brother, there comes a moment when the storm inside you finally goes quiet, and the whole world can feel it even if you say nothing. For weeks you've been wrestling with urges, breaking patterns, rebuilding piece by piece. But then one morning you wake up and something is different. The air feels lighter. The noise that used to flood your head isn't gone completely, but it no longer controls you. You're breathing again, slow, steady, intentional. The silence that once felt like punishment now feels like a shield you chose to hold. Think back to where you started. Every notification used to feel like an alarm. Your body lived in panic mode, always bracing for rejection or scraps of attention. You woke with a knot in your stomach, reaching for your phone before you even opened your eyes fully, desperate to know if someone had finally reached back. That frantic energy was visible to everyone. You didn't have to say a word for people to sense it. Now, something has shifted. The phone buzzes and you don't flinch. You don't let the vibration hijack your nervous system. You wake slowly, breathe deeply, and step into your morning before you touch a single screen. You make coffee, stretch, maybe walk outside to feel the early light on your face. These small actions seem ordinary, but they are revolutionary when you've spent so long living in reaction mode. You're reclaiming the first moments of your day, and with them, your center. At first, this peace feels almost strange, like wearing new armor you're not sure fits. You keep waiting for the panic to return, but it doesn't. You realize that calm doesn't mean numbness, it means strength. You're no longer a puppet pulled by someone else's attention. You stand on your own ground now, and that ground feels solid. Something remarkable begins to happen as this calm grows. You start walking differently, slower, steadier, with grounded eyes. You don't broadcast your worth, you embody it. People around you sense the shift without being able to name it. You're less reactive, more composed, harder to read. The man who once chased validation now carries quiet authority, and authority, real authority, is magnetic. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of self-mastery. It's not loud, not boastful. It's the stillness that comes when you've fought your own war and chosen not to be ruled by fear. This is magnetic presence. Presentia magnetica. It's not about arrogance or performance. It's about deep self-respect. You no longer seek permission to feel valuable. You've claimed it. And that energy doesn't go unnoticed. The one who once left, who once assumed you'd always be waiting, begins to feel the shift before they even understand it. Your calm makes them uneasy because it's unfamiliar. The old pattern, you chasing, you explaining, you filling silence, is gone. They're left with a version of you they can't predict, can't manipulate, can't easily dismiss. That quiet unpredictability is powerful. Brother, this is the return of presence. You're no longer auditioning for worth. You've stepped fully into it, and the world, especially the one who thought they could walk away without consequence, can feel it. Stay here, because this magnetic calm isn't just attractive, it's the foundation for everything that comes next, the moment when regret begins to take root on the other side, and the balance finally tips back into your hands. 8. The power flip. Their regret begins. Brother, silence has a way of flipping the script. What once left you restless and desperate now begins to make you untouchable. In the beginning, they assumed nothing would change. They expected you to keep doing what you always did. Chase, explain, fill every pause. They believed they could walk away or pull back and still have you waiting. But you have quietly rewritten the story, and now the weight of that rewrite is beginning to reach them. Days pass, then weeks. What they thought would be temporary distance turns into a vacuum they can't ignore. At first, it's easy for them to pretend it doesn't matter. They distract themselves, scroll through new conversations, fill their calendar with noise. But curiosity is a slow and dangerous thing. It starts as a faint whisper. Why hasn't he reached out? Why isn't he playing his part? And then, as the silence holds, that whisper grows into unease. They begin to test the waters. It's rarely obvious at first, a random like on an old post, a casual story view, a message that feels meaningless but is really a probe. Maybe a late night, hey, short and harmless on the surface, but loaded with curiosity underneath. These are small, careful moves designed to check if the door they once walked out of is still open. And here's where your discipline pays off. You don't bite. You don't feed the pattern you've worked so hard to break. Each ignored probe tightens the pressure. Each unanswered breadcrumb is a reminder that the dynamic has shifted. Slowly, cracks form in the ego that once felt so sure. Regret starts to creep in, sharp and unsettling. Did I push too far? Did I lose him for good? Did I mistake his love for weakness? This is where silence stops being a raw wound and starts to work as strategy fulfilled. You're no longer bleeding energy outward. You're no longer living in reaction. Instead, the pull begins to reverse. They're the ones feeling the tension now. They're the ones replaying old conversations, wondering where they lost control. The emptiness they created has turned into a presence they can't shake, your absence echoing louder than your words ever could. But here's the deeper Stoic truth you must hold on to. Your victory isn't found in their regret. The real win isn't watching them squirm or hoping they suffer the way you once did. The real victory is freedom. Freedom from needing their reaction to validate you. Freedom from measuring your worth by how quickly someone runs back. When you can watch their curiosity grow, see the regret forming, and remain steady, that's true power. Brother, you've flipped the game without playing it. You've stopped chasing and started owning your space. And now, as their world begins to feel the silence they created, you stand taller, calmer, unshaken. Stay here. Because the next step isn't about punishing them. It's about living fully in the strength you've built, no longer tethered to the approval you once craved. This is what true control looks like. Not control over them, but mastery over yourself. And that is the power they never saw coming. 9. Freedom 1. Mastery over self, not them. Brother, the final victory isn't reclaiming someone else. It's reclaiming yourself. For too long, you lived in reaction mode, letting other people's attention decide how valuable you felt. A notification could set your entire day on fire. A delayed reply could send you spiraling into self-doubt. Your worth was fragile because it belonged to someone else's choices. But now everything has shifted. The mornings you once surrendered to anxiety are yours again. You wake and breathe deeply before touching your phone. You move your body, lifting, walking, running, and feel strength return to places you once let go. You sit down and work on projects you used to neglect, pushing forward in areas that once froze under the weight of heartbreak. Your mind is calmer, sharper, more alive. You've built a life that no longer pauses to wait for a message. And then, almost inevitably, it happens. The message you once prayed for finally arrives. The one that used to feel like oxygen. A sign that maybe everything could go back to the way it was. But when it lands this time, it's different. Your heart doesn't race. Your hands don't shake. You don't rush to craft the perfect reply. You sip your coffee, read it slowly, and feel something you never expected. Peace. You realize, maybe for the first time, that you don't need this to feel whole anymore. This is the quiet, unstoppable power the Stoics spoke of, emotional freedom. Not control over others, but mastery over yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That realization has moved from a quote you once admired to a truth you now embody. You've stopped asking the world to validate you. You've stopped letting someone else's silence define you. The man you've become isn't built on their approval. He's built on discipline, on choosing dignity over desperation 100 times in 100 quiet battles. You've learned to sit with discomfort and turn it into power. You've learned that silence, when chosen, is not weakness, it's a forge. And inside that forge, every ounce of pain has been melted and reshaped into presence, confidence, and strength. Now you understand something profound. Whether they come back or not isn't the prize. The real prize is that you no longer need them to. You've already won. You've become the kind of man who moves with calm authority, who knows his value without needing it confirmed. And that calm is magnetic. It draws people in, but it no longer controls you. Brother, that's the true endgame of this journey. The silence you held wasn't about punishing them. It was about purifying you. It stripped away weakness, burned off the need for constant reassurance, and rebuilt your dignity piece by piece. You've stepped out of reaction mode and into authorship of your own life. So when that long-awaited message finally comes, you don't crumble, you don't beg, you don't even need to win them back, because the real win is already in your hands: self-mastery, emotional freedom, and a life built on your own terms. And once you've tasted this kind of strength, brother, you'll never trade it away again. This is where the journey stops being about them and becomes entirely about you. If this message has spoken to you, brother, let it become more than just words. This is the moment to anchor everything you've built: the discipline, the silence, the quiet strength that no longer depends on anyone else. Like this video, so more men searching for clarity and inner power can find it. Subscribe to Stoic Station for daily lessons on silence, self-mastery, and the unshakable calm you've been forging. In the comments, write this: "Silence is my power." 4 words that mark the day you stopped living in reaction and started living by your own strength. The one move of silence doesn't just make them regret losing you, it frees you from ever needing their approval again. That, brother, is the kind of power no one can take away.